Okay, good afternoon and welcome to the Sustainable Mail Group's 5th Symposium, Environmental Resources in Your Community, Canadian Green Economy Hubs. My name is Ward Griffin and I'm the chairperson of the Sustainable Mail Group. The Sustainable Mail Group is a nonprofit, member-driven organization that seeks to bring participation in the direct mail industry from marketer to delivery to help make the industry more environmentally sustainable. Just some minor housekeeping details for the event. We're scheduled from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. this afternoon. You can ask questions using the chat and or the Q&A function, but the questions won't be answered until the last 10 minutes of the event. The event is being recorded and will be posted to the Sustainable Mail Group's YouTube channel, where you can also find links to the previous 4 events we've conducted this year. A link to that channel is visible in the chat right now. If you don't want to miss any more of our content, I recommend that you subscribe to our channel and also click on that bell icon when you subscribe so you don't miss any content. If you like what you see, please consider joining the Sustainable Mail Group at the link provided in the chat and become part of the community. It is important to have a diverse set of voices representing the complete industry influencing what we do. So we are looking to expand our membership aggressively in the next 3 to 6 months. So please consider joining the Sustainable Mail Group. So with that, let me hand over to our moderator for today's session, Andrew Geiston. Andrew is the Executive Director of the Sustainable Mail Group and responsible for the day-to-day operations of the group. Andrew divides his time running SMG and a consulting business focused on helping companies research, develop, and implement sustainable material and operations policies. Andrew has 30 years experience, tenure in corporate sustainability, marketing, mergers, and acquisitions. So with that, I'll hand it over to Andrew.
Thanks, Ward. I'm grateful for everybody to have joined our and in particular, I'm grateful for our 2 panelists. And maybe if we could start by just giving an opportunity to introduce themselves and introduce their organizations. And let's start off with Jennifer.
I'm muted. Had to do that at least once this call. But yes, my name is Jennifer Taves, and thank you so much for having me and Partners in Project Green here, Andrew and Ward. We appreciate it. This is a really important topic. Getting sustainability embedded into all avenues of our supply chains and actions and industries is very, very important to fighting the climate emergency that we find ourselves facing. So very much appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation. And just to give a little bit of background on Partners in Project Green, I know we'll dive into it a little bit more, but we consider ourselves a community of leaders advancing environmental action and economic prosperity across the Greater Toronto Area. So our membership and the businesses and organizations that we work with are private businesses, government, institutions, utilities, and we all work to collectively advance social and environmental sustainability through knowledge sharing, technology and infrastructure implementation, and really importantly, network building. So we help businesses lower their operational costs while integrating environmental and social responsibility into their business models. And we work in partnership with our municipalities to advance sustainability in the region as a whole.
Josh, can we get a bit of a background on yourself and Green Economy Canada?
Hi, Andrew, and thank you as well for having me here. My name is Joshua Buck. I'm the program manager at Green Economy Canada for the City of Edmonton's Corporate Climate Leaders Program. Green Economy Canada is a national nonprofit working to accelerate Canada's transition to a vibrant and inclusive net zero future. And we do this through support to a growing network of 10 Green Economy hubs, which are across the country. We have 7 hubs in Ontario, a hub in the province of New Brunswick, and our hub here in Edmonton. And we're collectively working with over 250 businesses of all sectors and sizes to set and achieve sustainability goals. And we're pretty similar, I think, in what Jennifer just said with Partners in Project Green, working just with everybody that we can to advance Canada's sustainability goals and work to achieve the net zero future that we all know is possible.
Thanks, Josh. I think you've kind of answered a few questions that I kind of got into, wanted to get into at the beginning, but maybe we can kind of turn the question to Jennifer. what are the roots of Partners in Project Green, and in particular, what's the geography that you guys end up covering, and what's notable about that geography? Because I know that's something that, when I belonged to PPG, was something that kind of got pushed out quite a bit in terms of the messaging.
It's actually changed a little bit, but let me start with the background. So we were launched in 2008 as a result of a decades-long partnership with the Greater Toronto Airports Authority, who manage Toronto Pearson Airport. So the Greater Toronto Airports Authority really wanted to go beyond their four walls and into the community to further their sustainability efforts. So the idea was really that we can do more together than we can apart. And I think that's something that Green Economies Canada and Partners in Project Green share, that we can all work together to advance this mission. But what we found was that our borders were always so blurry. We would always be working with businesses outside of what we called the Pearson Eco Business Zone. And because of that, we now serve businesses across the entire TRCA jurisdiction. So that's from, the city of Mississauga all the way to the region of Durham. So Peel to Durham and kind of up north, a little bit into York, but not too far. So, but we cover businesses of all shapes and sizes and all industries, which again is a little bit unique for an organization of what we do. But we find that cross-pollination of the ideas from different sectors really allows more interesting conversations to be had and people to learn from each other that they normally wouldn't have the opportunity to do so.
Josh, you guys don't have necessarily the benefit of having the geographic concentration that PPG ends up having, in that you're spread apart to a greater degree in a number of different communities. But do the individual green economy hubs end up sharing much of the same common purpose and resources? Like, are there any differences in what they can do and what they do?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got 7 hubs in Ontario that until recently were more geographically focused on their local communities and building that network of leaders in those communities. So, we've got hubs in London and Kitchener, Waterloo, Hamilton, Burlington, York Region, and Northern Ontario, Ottawa, and all those kinds of places. But kind of like what Jennifer just mentioned with PPG, notice too that often our members were coming from outside of the traditional kind of strict boundaries that they have, and now our hubs are operating virtually across all of Ontario to provide services, as well as with the hub in the province of New Brunswick, a centralized hub for the whole province, and the work that we're doing here in Edmonton. Our hubs all share a common mission and vision, which is the same as Green Economy Canada's. We're working to build that local momentum and movement forward in order to enact the net zero future of Canada and to address the climate emergency. We're working with members of all sectors and sizes from right across the country, everything from retail, manufacturing, office-based nonprofits, and public sector. And similar to what Jennifer said, same thing. When you're facilitating those conversations between industries and businesses of all different sizes and sectors, there's a lot of really interesting outcomes that we've been able to realize because of that. And fostering those conversations is a big part of why our hubs started and why Green Economy Canada as an organization was kind of spun off originally in 2014 from the Sustainable Waterloo program that was originally started there.
So, this is a question and a conversation topic that actually kind of we got engaged in before, most of the people who are on this call jumped in. And that was that oftentimes the perception is that organizations that are larger can dedicate an individual resource to, a focus around either environmental action or ESG or sustainability, however you want to end up labeling it. But I think it's really important to highlight here that that you guys don't necessarily focus on one strata or size of organization. So, or for that matter, within a particular area. I think you kind of touched on it, but like, if you guys can maybe, illustrate a little bit, both of you, as to, what is the makeup in terms of type and size of the organizations that participate in your programs, or, your roundtables or your sessions. Are they big or small? Are they municipalities? Are they regional governments? Are they small companies or publicly traded companies, like privately held organizations or publicly held organizations? So can you give us a little bit of a flavor as to what, that picture might look like, and who comes to your events, participates in your events, participates in the discussion?
I'm happy to jump in on this one. And, when I say all sectors and sizes, I really mean that, right? We have like some of the businesses that we're working with here in Edmonton. We've got a water company, Earth Group, that's, a very small team of just a couple of people. They're producing, the most sustainable bottle of water that they can, and producing their B Corp, and have a lot of great social benefits that come along with the product they're making. Up to larger road construction crews or companies like Bath Industries and Hanlon Paving. We've got public traded companies like Boardwalk REIT, which has over 90 multi-residential buildings, multi-tenant residential buildings here in Edmonton, quite a number of assets. We've got just really a huge range, and they all participate in our various workshops and events that we put on. It's kind of like your membership, it's diverse, and you never know who's necessarily going to attend, but we make sure to really have all of the voices represented on panel discussions and our webinars and stuff like that, so that, everyone can see themselves in the work and can learn from each other, because everybody's trying to achieve the same goal, but in different ways. Like if you own your own assets and your own facilities, you have a little bit more operational control over some of the things you can do. If you're in leased spaces, sometimes it's a bit of a challenge to start working with your landlords and property managers and stuff like that. And so really just having everyone at the table and getting all those voices heard is a key to the work that we do.
Jennifer, I mean, you guys span a very concentrated geography in the GTA. I mean, can you maybe, kind of talk to, in a similar fashion, what, the constituency looks like in terms of the participation for your organization?
Sure. Yeah, I think that a lot of it is quite similar to what Josh was talking about. Like we also find a very wide range of sizes and types of industry that we participate with. We have a lot of manufacturers that we work with, from very small companies like, your Amtex Yarns or your Nahini Steels, smaller organizations, to your very large food and beverage manufacturers like Maple Leaf Foods and Molson Coors and people like that. So we find that there's things to be learned from the small and large. Of course, a lot of that does have to be tailored to your unique situations. Josh spoke about the difference between being in owned space versus leased space, which is certainly a consideration. One is also just, what kind of capacity do you have internally and to bring in other consultants and things like that. That's a really big part of what kinds of programs or what kinds of support Partners in Project Green, or I imagine Green Economies Canada, would provide, really tailoring what you need to where you're at, both in terms of size, capacity, location, and where you are in your sustainability journey. Because some people they've just started this and are just looking to go, okay, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to start. And some people have done so many things, and they're now wondering, where do I go next? And so there's quite a range of interests and even what they can contribute back to the community is an interesting thing that we find, so that, again, that idea of cross-pollinating ideas from everybody that's at the table and having that table be as diverse as possible is what we find to be a key factor in our success.
You both brought something up, okay, that I don't want to be presumptuous that our guests would end up having understanding specifically, but what are the challenges that you kind of talk about owned versus leased spaces, and how does that impact around what some people have been able to end up doing? Any of you?
Sure. I think I can talk a little bit, and then Josh, I'm sure you've got some additional thoughts. For us, it comes down to desire to implement. So if you're in a leased space and don't have a lot of control over the lighting or the operational controls that are in place in the building, and just pay your lease on a regular basis, especially if you're not sub-metered and your energy costs are just built into your lease, sometimes finding the motivation or encouraging folks to understand why it still is beneficial can be a challenge. And same on the other end, if somebody has the energy costs built into their leasing and they're getting that lease money every month regardless, they're not necessarily motivated. But what we find is the best situation is when we can find leasers and landowners that will work together. And this definitely does exist. Enviro Stewards is a wonderful example of this. Enviro Stewards leases their building, and they just decided that they wanted to sub-meter and they wanted to put a blue roof on that facility because they knew that it would have benefits for them. And it had benefits for the landowner as well, because that building was flooding and causing flooding in another unit that had nothing to do with Enviro Stewards. So those kind of relationships, and I think that's what we've kind of been dancing around the whole time, is it's really about relationship building and getting people to have those conversations and understand that if we come up with systems-based solutions and we work together, that we can drive further action. I might have gotten a little away from your question there, but
yeah, I mean, I completely agree with Jennifer. It all depends on what the organization that we're working with, what they're looking to achieve, and how far they're willing to go. Goodwill Industries of Alberta is one of the members we have out here that I'm working with, and they've been able to work with a number of their landlords to implement a number of energy efficiency projects, everything from LED retrofits in their retail lease facilities, programmable thermostats, air curtains, and that kind of stuff. And what they're finding as well is when they're having these conversations with their landlords, that the landlords that are willing to work with them, they're cementing those relationships. They're finding ways to share costs with them. They're building like green lease aspects into their lease renewal process. And the landlords that aren't willing to work with them, then they're looking for new spaces and they're just going to walk away from that. We're seeing that across our network, how important this is. And we have a number of members that have own assets on the other end that are landlords, right? They own commercial retail spaces and they're looking to attract tenants, especially in office spaces. We had a chat a little bit before this meeting started about the work from home and the big shift that's happening there. So how are you bringing back people to the office? What are you offering to tenants in those office spaces? How are you really standing above? And sustainability and building health are big key aspects in that, especially if you have any federal government space that you're leasing out, right? The federal government has net zero targets for the office spaces that they lease. And so if you have that space and you want to keep the federal government as a tenant, you have to be doing a lot of work to improve the energy efficiency of that space.
Great. So I think we've talked about the who to an extent. I think, maybe the next transition should be about the what. And specifically, so what are some of the things that your organizations do to help fulfill on your and help organizations and businesses achieve their objectives? Jennifer, PPG has some areas of focus. Please talk about those, and can we kind of extract specific case scenarios and cases if you're comfortable to talk about them?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So as you mentioned, we focus on 4 key areas, and we provide, lots of different tools in all of those areas. So capacity building, events and training opportunities, collaboration. So real opportunities for sharing information amongst other people who are doing the same kind of work as you. We do provide some implementation support to actually get projects off the ground and in starting to make savings for our member businesses. And engagement support is a big tier as well across all the areas. So what we do is we focus on energy performance, waste diversion, water stewardship, and engagement. And I'll talk a little bit about those 4. So energy performance certainly is a very, a long-lasting and hot topic item because it's a big bang for your buck, honestly, in terms of business sustainability. It's one of the most direct ways that you can start to see return on investment and carbon emission savings. So we focus a lot on that. And our flagship energy program is a consortium that's been running for 10 plus years called our Energy Leaders Consortium. And this is a model that is very successful. It brings large energy users as well as small energy users together to talk about their challenges in what they're facing, crowdsource solution to ideas. We provide training and making sure that everyone stays kind of up to date on all of the latest and greatest in energy management technologies and practices. And the results have been pretty fantastic. Like in 2021 alone, we saw our members save 45 gigawatt hours, 466 million liters of water, 6,700 tons of CO2 emissions, and $3.1 million. And that was 2021 alone. So the scope of the effort has just been wonderful. And a lot of these members have been in that consortium for those 10 years and see savings year over year over year over year. So I just like translating those big numbers into things that people actually can, relate to. So it's just the 2021 numbers were enough to power 33 million homes, enough water for 7.7 million 10-minute showers, and enough CO2 equivalent to offset emissions from 8,944 round trip flights from Toronto to Vancouver. So it's not small, right? It's not small. And that's a group of 18 businesses. So if you think about what other businesses could be doing and are doing, it's a wonderful thing.
Sorry, and what kind of going back to maybe the previous question, what is the makeup of the participants in the consortium? Like it's not a singular strata, right? It's a variety of different sizes and companies.
Mm-hmm. It's mostly manufacturing. In that particular consortium, we have a lot of manufacturers, but we also have some hospital units that are in there. So we have some hospitals that participate, as well as smaller manufacturers. So like a Nahini Steel, for example, I mentioned them before, participates in that one, and Maple Leaf Foods is in that. So you can kind of see that it runs the gauntlet of size. But we found that particular consortium focusing on manufacturers was a good place to start. And then over the years, we found opportunities to bring in other sectors as well, and to start to take what they've learned in their operations and parse it out to warehousing and logistics and other firms like that. Mm-hmm.
Josh, you guys do some things that are similar, and yet then when I look at studies that you guys had ended up pushing on your website, that at first glance doesn't necessarily end up equating quite as direct that, but does end up having an impact. And I think that that has the opportunity to end up blending other kinds of business decisions into having environmental impacts in some ways. And I was just wondering if we could maybe talk about, like, I think it was Split Rail Brewing, in terms of a case study that you guys have ended up publishing it, which initially kind of struck me as being like, wow, that doesn't strike me as being something that I would necessarily look at, but the results, spell it out pretty clearly.
Yeah, absolutely. So, each hub has, we're all working together as a network to, advance Canada's net zero goals and our climate goals. Each hub also has some of them have their own specific focuses and areas as well, around similar topics: energy performance, waste diversion, water reductions, and those types of things. We've got, a lot of different members with lots of different actions that they've implemented over the years. Split Rail Brewing on Manitoulin Island in Gord Bay is a really good example of a member of Green Economy North's participation in the work that they've been doing. They have a couple of different things that they've done. They have a waste diversion program where they're diverting the waste from their brewing process to local farms for feed for livestock. So instead of all of that spent grain going to farms or to landfills, now it's going and feeding animals, which is a really good way to make their entire process more circular. They also have a new canning line that they've installed, which allows them to now can and use aluminum cans instead of primarily bottles like they were before. Before they were using once a month, they had a canning line come up from Toronto to help them do that canning. But now that they have it in-house, they can save a lot of time and money by doing that, as well as the sustainability of the aluminum cans. It's cheaper to transport. Those savings can be passed on to their consumers. And that's a really good example of just some small changes that an organization can make that have really big outcomes for them. We've also got a number of programs that we've been running as a network. One of them is our Net Zero Pathways project that we've been working with a group of 10 manufacturers in Ontario in partnership with Delphi Group and Pembina Institutes. We've got Canada's goal of achieving its 40 to 45% emissions cuts by 2030. But the question of how the small and medium-sized enterprises, which make up 99% of business in Canada and more than half of Canada's GDP, how they're going to be able to leverage this opportunity to hit their net zero targets. So we've worked with these 10 manufacturers in Ontario to find what a pathway to net zero looks like for them. And we found so far that with available technology today, they can easily make a 50 to 75% reduction in their emissions, but they need financial and non-financial supports in order to achieve this. So we've got a white paper coming out next year that we've written with Pembina Institute that will have more of those details. And we use that to talk to stakeholders and policymakers about getting those supports, because that's such an important piece of this. Another project that we've actually recently won a Clean Tech Award for was our Sustainable IT Procurement Pilot Project supported by HP Canada, where we worked with public sector organizations to figure out what the barriers and challenges to sustainability in their IT procurement was. The public sector's procurement alone is about 15% of Canada's GDP, and yet most RFPs don't consider sustainability as a key factor. So participants assess their sustainability procurement practices. They were given tools, education, peer connection opportunities, and access to experts to address areas for improvement. So this pilot strengthened and improved dialogue and collaboration within the participating organizations and with their vendors. So again, that relationship piece is really key that we were talking about. And some of the resources that were developed through this project are available on Green Economy Canada's website for free for anybody to use. There's a self-assessment tool there, and you can find ways to identify and improve your own sustainability procurement, not just in IT, but these procurement practices go beyond IT to all aspects of your procurement. So
I think we may have answered this a little bit, but how would let's take the case of the brewery, for instance, engage typically with you folks? I mean, what's typically the point of engagement? How does it end up starting?
So I can speak to the businesses in Edmonton that I work directly with. So through the Corporate Climate Leaders Program that we administer on behalf of the City of Edmonton, it's a program that any business of any size and sector can join. It's very similar to a Green Economy Canada hub. And so members join this program and they make a number of commitments, which is to produce an annual greenhouse gas inventory report, to create a reduction plan, and to set targets for reductions for 2025 and 2035, which are part of the City of Edmonton's energy transition strategy. And so, we come across these businesses in the program, and they're often asking that question: where do we start? How do we do this? What's a greenhouse gas inventory? How do we make that? And so we train them in what carbon accounting is. We train them in reduction planning. We train them in how to set achievable and credible targets based on science. And then we work with them to scope out their inventory, to collect their data, to figure out what data gaps they have, what they need. We give them their inventory reports, and then we work with them through the process of developing that reduction plan. We have a bunch of tools that we've built to help them create business cases for the actions that they need. We provide opportunities for funding, be it, some of our hubs are receiving funding from their municipality or different orders of government to help move projects forward. Or there's other provincial or federal grants that we help people get so that they have the funds available to move their actions and reduce their emissions.
Jennifer?
Yeah, so our connections first start with finding out what's important to the organization. What are you going after this year? Where are your sustainability goals? Where do they lie? Because for some folks, it's just very much, okay, getting their feet wet, learning what they're trying to do. So they start as a member or, coming out to events and getting knowledge and that capacity building and that network building that they would want to do. And then for ones that want to go further along the path, we have advanced programs like our Energy Leaders Consortium, which I spoke about. We also have our Circular Economy Leaders Consortium, which focuses in on facility waste management that really helps businesses start to identify how they can reduce their waste to landfill and find alternative methods of disposing of their waste and really getting into that circular economy piece. And then we have other flagship programs that help different areas of sustainability goals as well. So we very much target what an organization specifically themselves are looking at accomplishing, and then we provide internal capacity and support for that ourselves. So we have experts in energy management, in circular economy, and in in water stewardship and on-site stormwater management and things like that. Being a conservation authority, we have a lot of expertise in the climate change science and what that looks like from a heat vulnerability perspective and what that looks like from a flood management perspective. So we provide those kinds of supports to cater to what the businesses are trying to achieve.
So, I mean, one question that kind of is inevitably going to end up coming up, right, is that like, so if I, or somebody else ends up, reaching you guys, like what's the cost to them? What's the expectation outside of effort, and necessarily what's the fiscal expectation in terms of engagement? Just the engagement piece, not the implementation side of things, because that's another element entirely. Like, what does it cost to hook up with you guys?
Sure. So for us, we are very fortunate in the fact that we are supported by the Toronto Region Conservation Authority, or that's who I work for. So we are able to offer our fees at a highly subsidized rate. So for small businesses, it's a couple of $100s a year. The largest size businesses in the highest membership category is in and around $2,500 a year. So we're not talking big dollars here. We're in a fortunate position in that we're able to do that. But we really want to get as much out there into the business community as possible. And we offer a lot of free resources. We understand that there are small businesses that just can't even do a couple of $100 a year. There was single proprietors, mom and pop joints. So we have a series of resources that are available for free on the website, focusing completely on small businesses. They span, again, our 4 topic areas: energy, water, waste, engagement. And they provide short videos that you can watch so you can learn how to start managing your energy or water or waste, as well as additional resources. Those are completely free. We run a ton of events throughout the year, many of which are free. Our Green Economy webinar series is free. So, we really do want to make sure that the information gets in the hands of those that need it. And we also really share out other resources that are available that we might not produce, but that other groups do. We really just want to get the information in the hands of the businesses and enable them to become more sustainable, both from a social and environmental perspective.
Josh?
Yeah, so each of our hubs in our network has their own fee structure. So it's hard to say like what the cost would be at any one spot. Again, we're nonprofits. We're not the big consultants of the world. We're not charging those kinds of prices for members that we're working with and providing the services of carbon accounting and planning and all of that stuff in Edmonton. It ranges from, for very small organizations, a couple people, to just over $1,000, all the way up to about $6,000 a year. We're fortunate in Edmonton. The city of Edmonton provides a small and medium-sized rebate or business rebate for up to 50% of the cost to work with an external service provider to join and to be a part of the Corporate Climate Leaders Program. And we find that kind of support is typical in a lot of our hubs. There's different levels of support in different hubs, but really the goal is to try to get as many people, engaged in our network, trying to move the work forward, to build that community and to advance all of our collective goals. And so we don't want financial means to be a barrier to entry, much like PPG. We have a lot of those case studies and resources available on our website as well. Same with our hubs. The hubs all have their own websites. They have their own resources. They've got events and webinars that they're putting on. Some of those are free to the public. Some of them are for members only, and different things like that. And so it's really just, it's hard to say there's not one set fee because we're just spread out all over the place, but really we're for everybody. And it's great that we can see so many people join, and we don't usually find that our fees are a barrier to for the amount of service that we're providing.
Josh, I mean, maybe a kind of back a little bit to some of the questions, because something just came to mind around in one of the programs that you guys, I think, have out there on a national level, and that's the EV charger incentive program that you have in place. Can you talk about that a bit, please? Maybe just to highlight, some of the efforts you guys have put out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So the electric vehicle charging infrastructure program is a really good example of some of the grants and funding opportunities that Green Economy Canada has gone after. So we received $4 million from Natural Resources Canada to fund this program. It's a 2-year program, so the funding for 2022 has been allotted already. We've got a new intake and round of funding coming for 2023. The program is for, everyone in Canada, every business, every organization in Canada that is looking for support in installing electric vehicle infrastructure. So chargers, there's up to 50% of the cost of electric vehicle charging infrastructure, up to $100,000 per business available. And one of the really great things that we've been able to do as an organization is that we have an early application window for underrepresented communities and organizations with a focus on women-led and BIPOC-led organizations, so that a lot of these grants that come out from the federal government or from different organizations, they get snapped up really quickly, typically by organizations that have the resources and staff in place to make those applications. And so we're really trying to focus some of our efforts on providing that equity-seeking opportunities for folks.
You kind of alluded this a little bit earlier, but I mean, I think it's important to the people who are participating in this to gauge effort has some success criteria behind it. So like, how do you guys measure sort of what was behind that? But can you give us a sense as to what success you guys have kind of can allude to and brag about? Anybody?
Sure, you were breaking up there a little bit, but I think the fundamental part of the question was, how do we measure our impact and our success? So yes, we do that in a number of ways. Clearly, we measure it by the amount of people that are in our community, because we believe that the strength of the community is in who's here and who can share out the information. So we certainly measure membership, but we also measure the impact of our program. So how much GHG are we actually reducing through the influence of our programs? How much waste from landfill are we diverting? How much water are we taking away from the storm stewards? Like, we measure all of those impacts very, very closely to make sure that the programs that we are investing in and putting our businesses through actually will impact have impact on their sustainability performance. So those are extremely important measures for us. And then in terms of, we like to measure our success in terms of how many people participate in our events and come and go to our resources and things like that. We work very hard to design very impactful events that drive education, whether or not you're a member of Partners in Project Green. So for example, net zero is a very big, important topic that people are hearing about a lot these days, but one of the challenges, and Josh, you alluded to it, is how do we actually pay for that? Like, how do we have the technologies, but how do we actually get those projects in the ground? So we'll be doing a series on just that. So providing information for folks where they can actually look at their projects and decide whether or not an energy as a service or an ESCO model would work for financing their net zero project. And then another one, which would look at all of the incentives that are available, but also how they would actually go and apply and assess the projects that they might want to do for that. And then talking about banking and insurance. So really the quality of information that we measure is important to us, that we're putting out high quality, high impact information. Conversations are so important, but we need to move people to action. So that's how we consider ourselves successful, is how many projects are actually getting done.
Josh?
Again, very similar for Green Economy Canada. We measure the impact that we're having in our communities and the impact that we're having across the country. Here in Edmonton with the Corporate Climate Leaders Program, the City of Edmonton has been able to demonstrate that the program has, it's the members in the program represent about 10% of the community emissions in Edmonton, which is a pretty great success for a program of just about 70 members. Since the members have set baseline inventories and begun to measure the reductions that they've made, we've got members, they've been able to make the emission reductions equivalent to about taking 70,000 cars off the road. So that's one way that we can measure our success. It's just how many people are engaged in these programs, what are the emissions reductions looking like, how much water has been saved, how much electricity, how much gas has been saved, those kinds of things. And then at Green Economy Canada as well, it's how many people are participating in our various projects and webinars, things like our Sustainable Development Goals series, the success of the Net Zero Pathways projects, the Sustainable IT procurement. I mean, winning a Clean Tech award is a pretty good way to measure success, but really it's just about how much closer are we getting Canada and our communities to its goals, our climate goals. We know these are extremely important, and that's at the end of the day, we can measure the kind of incremental progress that we're all making. But some of these are long-term goals. Like, we're not going to know until we get closer to 2050, what our success actually looks like. And really, we're trying to avert the very worst of climate change. We want to keep global warming below 1.5 degrees. We don't have a lot of room left in that carbon budget. So that's how we're measuring success.
So if anyone's on the call is interested in getting, learning more, trying to end up engaging with you guys, how do they start? I'm gonna kind of fire a bunch of questions off at you. So, like, how do they start with that? Like, what do they need to end up participating in? And I guess, if some of those stakeholders aren't necessarily on the call, who do you typically see participating with you guys from those businesses? Like, who are those champions typically in those organizations?
Yeah, I think so. In order to engage with us, I think the easiest thing would be for people to go to our website, greeneconomy.ca, and there's an interest form on the website that you can fill out. I can put a link in the chat box if people want. And that also has links to all of our various hubs where you can engage locally as opposed to joining the national hub if that was something that you were more interested in. But the who in an organization is an interesting one because, in large organizations, it's often somebody with the sustainability in their title, where it's a core part of their job. That's their role. They're looking for opportunities to learn and engage with others that are doing the same work as they are. In smaller organizations, we're working with people who maybe this is something that's new to them. It's new to their role, new to their organization, and it's kind of off the side of their desks. And so we work with those organizations to develop green teams and really build support among their entire organization. Sometimes it's the senior leadership that's coming to us and saying, this is really important. It's important to my shareholders. It's important to our stakeholders. It's important to, X, Y, and Z. And we want to learn more and find out how we can measure our emissions and reduce them. So it's, it kind of depends on the organization, but I will say the organizations that are most successful are the ones that have that senior leadership buy-in, where it's really being driven from the top down. It's great when you have the bottom-up approach, where you get all of your employees engaged and working together and moving in the same direction. But you do need that senior leadership buy-in so that it's a lot easier, projects get funded easier, and the work is more successful ultimately.
Jennifer?
Yeah, I would agree with everything Josh said about who we engage with, because it does very much depend on the size of the organization and all of that. And as well with that senior leadership buy-in piece, it's very important. So I'll just say everything Josh said, you can apply to us as well. In terms of getting involved with us, a great way, easy way to start is to subscribe to our newsletter. That way you'll be just kind of informed of all the events that are coming out. We also are about to release a large suite of carbon resiliency tools for businesses. So that's a great way to stay in touch with that. I can pop it in the chat, though I'm not sure if my messages will go to the entire group because it just says to hosts and panelists, but I'll put
No,
it
you
in
can,
there.
you can just
Oh.
select everyone in the choices, and
it-
if you share it with us, any resources with us, we'll definitely post it when we post them, when we post it to our YouTube channel as well.
Great. Yeah, it doesn't give me the option for everyone. So I will
Okay.
just
Fired
make
off to me.
sure that, yeah, so I'll put it there. That's a really great way to get started. Or honestly, you can reach out to me. I can put my email in the resources as well so that we can have a conversation about what your environmental priorities are and what we could do to help. And the thing is that we very, very much believe in collaboration. It is at the heart of what we do. So if we work closely with the green economy network hubs that are around us. So if it's not us, we can direct you to other organizations as well. We are all in this together. At the end of the day, we all have different niches and different offerings, and we really want to see everyone succeed in this. So certainly I'm just open to conversations about what you need in your organization and about where that need could best be met.
So just as maybe a last thing before we kind of get into some questions possibly is there anything specific right in the immediate future that's kind of coming up event wise that you guys want to highlight for people, or invite them to, if it's possible, virtual or in real life, given that I think that's starting to happen again?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we are very excited about our upcoming fall forum called Resiliency and Regeneration, the Next Stage in Business Sustainability. It's happening on November 10th. It currently is scheduled as an in-person event at Pearson Convention Center. I would say, though, that we are carefully evaluating the situation as COVID cases are on the rise, so that may change, and we would let people know. But I'm very excited about this event. We have two fantastic keynote speakers. One, Gary Pritchard from 4 Directions of Conservation Consulting, who will be talking about blending Indigenous worldviews and Western science to come together in the fight against climate change. Another keynote speaker, Tom Rand, who's a Canadian author, and he recently released a book on climate capitalism and how we can leverage the economy to drive environmental results. So those keynotes are something I'm excited about. I mentioned that we're doing a Financing Net Zero series next year, and we're going to deeper dive into the topic through that series, but we're going to do a panel discussion on it as well during this session so we can start to understand, what are some of the other ways that you could finance your projects and get those off the ground. We're also going to be talking about building a climate resilient business and what that looks like. And then leading the way through social impact, which is a really important part of this conversation. When people can blend their environmental programs with their social programs, it can have real tangible results for the communities in which we live and work. So I'm very excited for this one. I hope it can be in person, but if not, we have a great strategy to make sure that everyone can still access all the content.
And the best way to find out about those is to sign up for the newsletter on your site?
Sure. Yeah, just go straight to partnersinprojectgreen.com and click on events and you'll see it. And I can also make sure that link goes out with everybody, to everybody through you, Andrew.
Yep. Josh?
Yeah, so here in Edmonton, the Corporate Climate Leaders Program has an event coming up in November on the 10th. It's the benefits and challenges of sustainable procurement and supply chains. Really looking forward to that. We've got a number of speakers coming in to talk to our members about those challenges, the ways that they've overcome it. And we also always feature local members in those conversations as well too. So we bring in a blend of external members as well as what folks are doing, because that peer-to-peer learning is so important. Across the network, there's always events going on in each of the hubs. I'll make sure to put a list of some of the upcoming events in the resources I give you, Andrew. There's just too many to name. And we've also got like the EV charging program that's coming up. We'll make sure that that's available for your members and they can know about when that funding opportunity comes up. But it's just, yeah, it's great to see so much stuff happening all the time. And I actually subscribe to the PPG newsletter and I love seeing all the stuff that they're doing because like Jennifer said, this is a very collaborative effort we're all making, right? There's no competition in getting to net zero first. It's just, we have to do it. There's no choice. And so the more that we all work together and the more that we can help each other and influence each other and just row in the same direction, the more success we're going to have.
So we have one question that's been posted right now on the Q&A, and if anybody has any thoughts that come to mind, please by all means, fire them off in the Q&A or in the chat. We'll post them up to our panelists. This is an interesting one because it's a little bit different than where I think a large portion of the conversation has ended, and that is. I think it's more focused on design, but let me read the question to you. So it's what practices should more companies take to create sustainable design? I think I know where this is coming from. It's and packaging. What should aspiring young members of the industry know about being about sustainable design? Do you guys have either anything that you want to chime in on that? It's been core to the conversation outside of perhaps the brewery example, perhaps a little bit. But is there any effort been taken around that bit? Not so much the operations, but product design and that.
Do you want to take this, Jennifer, first? Or?
Yeah, you go ahead. Yeah, you can go ahead.
Absolutely. I think in the manufacturing sector that we work with, the businesses there, absolutely design and the creation of their products is something they're always looking to be more efficient, to reduce the inputs, reduce waste and all of that stuff. It's kind of a broad category of things, and I don't have a ton of examples off the top of my head. I would say that we've got the case studies on our website and the hubs, but it's a really important one for young new people in their careers looking to implement sustainability. I think there are a lot of great networks out there for professionals on LinkedIn, organizations like Jennifer and mine that you can join and learn more about. And I think it really depends on the angle you're looking at it for too. Is it to reduce energy use? Is it to reduce waste? Is it to reduce the embodied carbon of your product too? Like that's something we're seeing, especially in the building trades. There's some organizations we're working with out here in Edmonton that have a goal of, every building they build in 2040 going forward will be net zero, regardless of whether or not the clients want that. That's just where it is. It's the same kind of thing that we see steel and concrete, cement industries going towards as well, right? So it really depends on what aspect you're looking at it from as an organization.
Yeah, and I would just echo those comments and then just add, looking at the circularity is like just a wonderful place to start. We often enter places from climate change and net zero, but I think circular economy is a great entry point as well, especially when you're considering a tangible physical object. So when you're thinking about either the packaging of your product or the product itself, really taking that lens of like kind of those 6 major buckets of the circular economy, which I would love to rattle off, but won't be able to at this point in time. But the Circular Innovation Council, the former Recycling of Ontario group. Anyway, if you search Circular Innovation Council, they have fantastic resources on circular economy and on how to look at your product and service from that lens. So I think that is a particularly good entry point when coming from a material object.
I've got a question here. I'm not really sure I understand it now. So maybe somebody who posted it can provide more details, or maybe can get it. Joshua, you mentioned a CPG newsletter. Does that make sense to anybody?
Sorry, you cut out there just as you were saying. Is it the CCLP newsletter?
CPG. Sorry, guys, I may be a little bit of trouble with bandwidth here. Does that make sense to anybody?
I mentioned the PPG newsletter. I don't know
bingo,
if
that's it.
if that
That
was
was
the
it.
one.
Maybe a
Yeah,
typo.
yeah.
Trying to think where C is on the keyboard. Yep, I
Okay.
think that was it. And I just
Okay.
shared the sign up page for that.
Great.
Yeah, it's a great newsletter.
Well,
Everyone should participate in it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
you know, the funny thing is I didn't expect this love in exactly, but thank you very much. Listen, I think we've come to the natural conclusion of our session. So I mean, thank you both, Jennifer. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Ward, for doing the introduction. I've shared the links Josh and for ended up providing so that you can sign up to either the PPG newsletter or getting details around Green Economy Canada. Thank you guys again for your time. Thank you everybody who attended for attending. The session's been recorded. We will be posting the video to our YouTube channel in the coming days. A note will go out to everybody who registered for the event that when the video gets posted, if you've enjoyed the content, we really hope that you'll end up sharing it within your network with your colleagues and stay on top of the content that we end up producing. You know, we highly recommend that people subscribe to our channel, and so that you don't forget that the content ends up getting posted, to click on that bell notification. And it's important, you know, that if you find the information is useful, that you join SMG. A link to the join group has posted and will also be posted on the YouTube channel, but you can always just go to our website at sustainablemailgroup.ca. And that's it for the session. Stay tuned. We'll be coming on board. Have a great afternoon, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.